Welcome
This is an awesome podcast. This is one of my favorite ones.
to the Jeff
That's a lot of whiskey, Jeff.
Macolino
Jeff Macolino.
podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Got a fun one for you today, a fun guest, and covering a topic that I don't think it's just hard to do at this point, 275 plus episodes in, covering some stuff that we've not ever talked about on here before. So always excited to do that. It's Kenneth D. King. I'll tell you a little bit more about him, and then you'll hear our conversation. I feel like there's something I should be announcing, but I, for the life of me, can't remember. So happy birthday, Isabella. It's her 16th birthday today. What the day this gets released, not the day I'm recording it. All right, yeah, let's just dive on in. So, this is a celebrated couture fashion designer, author, editor, and professor at the Fashion Institute of Technology, Kenneth D. King. His new book out is Doll Couture, Red Carpet Edition. So, fashion, dolls, not things we've talked about on this podcast before. So, but we talk about a lot of stuff. He's a very interesting guy, and very glad that I got to meet him. So, without further ado, let's dive on in. I'll see you on the flip side. All right, everybody. I'm very pleased to welcome Kenneth D. King to the Jeff Macolino podcast. How are you this night, Kenneth?
Night. I'm doing well. For those who are wondering, it's 10 o'clock New York time. Do you know where your children are? So I don't know. You're way too young for this, but back in the day, that was the thing. At 10 o'clock, do you know where your children are? Because back in my day, it's like they were outside playing.
Yeah.
So I'm much older than you. I'm 68. Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed.
Well, I use very good product, and I have the filter on my
got the DH filter on Zoom.
And the other thing is, one of the things I learned from one of my Park Avenue gals, she wears glasses. She said that way, it kind of blurs out the under eye area. So, yeah,
that's a smart. I'll have to store that in the memory banks. Yeah,
in about 20 years you might need it, but not right now.
Yeah, no, but it's a good thing to store in the back of the head.
Mm-hmm.
With as much as I drink, it probably won't be there long. But
Okay.
and to my listeners, they're probably like, how does he sound sober at 10 o'clock at night? I'm sober because this ties it. We were talking before the recording. The reason I had this window open on Monday night is I always had a weird desire to host bar trivia. I don't know if you've ever participated in that.
Well, you see, I don't drink, so I don't go to bars.
Oh yeah, well that's a good.
Yeah.
You're not going to stumble onto it, but it's there are people who don't drink that do it because it's a restaurant. But I done it in the past with friends, and it's just trivia. It's just questions, and I'm like, that's seems fun. It's almost like stand-up comedy adjacent because you can work some jokes in there and stuff like that. So I was a participant in it for so long, and then I saw a posting on someplace about would you want to host bar trivia? I'm like, yes, I would. I've always wanted to for some bizarre reason. So I started doing that on Monday nights, and I get home around 9:45. So I'm like,
Well, that explains it. Yes.
Open up the window. Because I talk to people all over the world, so having that late night East Coast time is, a lot of times the perfect time for a West Coast person. But of course, this is two East Coasters talking.
So, what do you want to know?
Well, let's start with I'd say the big thing, the book, Doll Couture.
Doll Couture. One moment. Where
Red
is it?
Carpet Edition.
Oh, yes. And of course, here it is. I knew it was here somewhere.
There we go. Yeah. And I can it's getting lost in the filter a little bit, but
okay.
you know what? I can share.
Oh, here. There, Doll
There you
Couture.
go.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yes, Doll Couture. It's it's a long story, but hey, we got time. I started sewing when I was 4. So my sister traded me my toy gun and holster set for her Barbie. So my Barbie was named Estelle. I back in the day, back in the early 60s, the story was that Barbie was a teenage fashion model. But if you ever look at the clothes from that time, those were grown-up lady clothes. Those were not teenage girl clothes. So my Barbie was named Estelle. She had a cool apartment. She lived in a big city. She drove a convertible. She went to the opera, the theater, and restaurants. And she only owned evening clothes. My parents and their friends would say, "Well, what does she wear to work?" And I would say, "Work?" And have you ever seen the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what she does for money? There are two references. They go just like that. $50 for the powder room. She was a hua.
Oh God.
She was I wouldn't say she probably slept, but she took money from men to go out with them. She was pretty.
Yeah,
And
like an
I think
escort.
well, yeah, and I think it was actually pretty good stunt casting because you would never, it took me till my 40s to realize, oh, so, at the time when I was a little kid, I didn't really know that, but thinking back on it, I think Estelle was, I think that's how she made it.
That's the wardrobe.
So for the, the family folks, sorry. So because my parents were never going to buy me those clothes. I was the boy child in Salina, Kansas. They just, they weren't going to do that. And so I started making clothes for my Barbies. And then when I was a teenager, I just made clothes for myself. My degree is in fashion merchandising with an emphasis on window display. So I had a 10-year career in window display before I started my business. So then I started my business, and actually, you were born in December of 86. And in December of 86 is just when I got my first, it was late November 86 when I got my first big break at this store in Los Angeles called Maxfield. And so I started making hats and I started selling to this store, and the rich and famous started showing up. And if you go on YouTube and you put in Elton John Diet Coke nightclub, the hat, the red hat, that's one of mine. So he has a lot of pieces. So I started making hats and then other accessories and so forth. And when you're self-employed, as you probably know, you have to have multiple revenue streams. You have to have money coming from different places. So
Yeah.
someone asked me to teach a class, and I thought, okay, what the hell, And I looked at the number on the check and I said, "Oh, more of this, please." Then I was doing, oh gosh, it was a sewing show on PBS in the early 90s called Sewing Today. It was the host, Nancy Fleming, former Miss America 1961. Her talent was sewing. You can see it on YouTube.
In the Miss America pageant.
Yes, it's charming. She's charming. She's lovely. So she was the host. I was the sewing person.
You see her. That's on. I'm just trying to think how she makes
Well,
it.
well, how she made it work? Because I asked her, because I'm the guy who asked the question. I said, did they put on Flight of the Bumblebee and you made an outfit in 90 seconds? She had a black sheath dress, 1961, and different accessories and jackets and skirts and hats and so forth to take a career girl from a day at the office to a night at the embassy. And
Mm,
it was like stand-up comedy with clothes. It was charming. It truly was. You can see it on YouTube. So she
wow.
was the host. I was the sewing person. And there were 26 episodes. And the director, his name was Big Ed. He was always eating. And one day I said, "Boy, you really like your food." And he said, "I got a figure to maintain." It's like, and you're doing a good job. So I remember one day he said to me, "Why are you doing this? You make hats for Elton John." I said, 1,500 a day. Now that was a good payday back then. I mean, it's nice now, but then it was really good. And it was 26 episodes. Do the math.
Wow.
So that got me my first book all those years ago. And so couture is one thing I do, teaching is something I do, writing books is something I do. Um, then fast forward a lot. Um, I moved to New York in 2004 from San Francisco. I was, San Francisco, then New York. And so I started teaching at FIT in San Francisco or in New York, then kind of fast forwarding some more in 2019, because my husband, his niece in Australia, it was decided that she was old enough for Barbie clothes. And so it was commanded that I make Barbie clothes. So between semesters, I just hunkered down. I thought this is just going to be fun. And I was making all these little clothes and posting them on Instagram. And I got this email from the fashion director of New York Magazine. She said, and there were 4 photographs. She said, "We're doing an article on Barbie as influencer. And so could you replicate these 4 looks?" Well, 2 of them are ugly. I didn't want to do them. So the other 2 I wanted to do. I said, "I want to do those. And I want this much money to do it," thinking they're going to say, go to hell. And they said, "Yeah, can you get it by the 15th one?" Oh, so my assistant, this is my assistant for those out there. Her name is my assistant. That's her name. And
Creative.
well, you see, she was the one who this was the doll I was using to get the clothes for my niece. So she was in charge of the top secret project because I was making these clothes, but I wasn't saying this is going to be a New York magazine. So then the article ran in New York Magazine, and it kind of got me going on making just just doing a deep dive in clothes because I've done all sorts of sewing in my time. Couture, ready to wear, if you need it on a runway in an hour, I can do it. I do all sorts of things. I trained with a woman in San Francisco named Simone who trained in Paris at the École Gare Levine as a premiere for a couture house. And she took me on as a student. And if she liked you, you got more work. So, I have a lot of different kinds of experience. So I just started kind of digging in with the doll clothes. And then the COVID hit and we were locked in here and I have a New York studio. It's not terribly big. So I needed something to do and there was one of the dolls that I have, her name is Crazy Bella. Now Crazy Bella she got a forehead back to here, and every now and then someone will make some remark about her forehead and I say to them, "Don't shame her. This is part of her unique beauty." So during the pandemic, I just decided, and I posted all of this on Instagram. So I decided that Crazy Bella was going to reinstitute the idea of the tar beach, meaning going up on your roof for sun in the interest of social distancing. So I went up on the roof, she had her little picnic and her little lounge chair and the whole bit. She decided that it was completely private up there, so she took off her bathing suit. Well, unbeknownst to her, there were these 2 guys with big long cameras taking pictures, and there was the whole blackmail story. Like, I had to make little teeny blackmail notes that she could hold, and it kind of. And if you want to see that story, Lola the Showgirl 24 on Instagram. That if you go all the way back, you get to see the Crazy Bella blackmail story because eventually they found the guys, they figured out who they were convicted, they were sent to jail. She triumphed back into New York society. She had a little cabaret act, and then she wrote her memoir called Fleeing Uphill in High Heels, A Tale of Fear and Hope. So when this memoir came out, and of course, in the book, all the little props, I do make those myself.
I was going to ask about
Yeah,
some of the
all of it, all those photos. That's all me photoshopping. So anyway, so then if you look in Lola the Showgirl 24, you're going to start seeing this red headdress because the first book, I call it the story, Doll Couture, the story of Lola. At the end of the Barry Manilow song, Lola drinks herself half blind. She
Okay.
lost her youth and she lost her Tony. Now she's lost her mind. And so I pick up the story there and I take it forward. And so it's a story of redemption. She, eventually ends up hanging out with my assistant and the other people in the studio, and they all decided that, to give her a leg up, we need to make her some new clothes so she can get some work. And then Crazy Bella hires her to handle her book tour. And then, so at the end, it's a story of redemption. She has a good group of friends, and all of the outfits in the story, there are the patterns, there are the step-by-step instructions. So it's a storybook with sewing. And how that came about, I write for a magazine called Threads Magazine. It's Taunton Press is the parent company. The CEO, a gal named Renee, we were having tea. It was December 22. And we were chatting, and I just kind of did this riff. I said, it'd be really cool to do a Crazy Bella story with sewing. And she'd been following my Instagram, so she knew what I was talking about. And she said, okay. And I sat there like, what does this mean? And she leaned in and she said, I'll have my people call you. So that's how the first book came about. And so then this one is an extension of that, because I own the characters from that book. And then I was approached. It was, I lose track of time. It was 2024, and like October 24. The gal who had run Taunton Press Books had made her own company, and she called and said, would you like to do another one? I said, absolutely, I would love to do another one. And she said, red carpet looks. So this one is it's whereas the Lola story, it was a narrative. This one is one particular evening. It's the story of one particular evening. And Crazy Bella is on the red carpet with the microphone, and there are some old characters, some new characters come. And so there's the photo of them on the red carpet. Then there is a little character sketch with some amusing photos, and you get kind of a sense of who they are and what they're up to. And then there's the fashion sketch, which my husband did, and then the how-to. So it was so damn much fun, I have to say. And the first book, when I was editing the first, or when I was doing the first book, my editor, Judy Newcomb, um, that was a tight deadline, because we are trying to kind of surf the wave of the Barbie movie. This is in 23.
Right.
So I had from January 1st until June 1st to get everything done, from the story to the photos to the illustrations to the patterns and someone said to me, how did you get it done? I don't know. I just know I did. I had so much going that semester. And so when I turned everything over to Judy, I was kind of off and running on like, how are we going to promote the book and all this? And she said, why don't you just slow down for a moment? She said, stop. And because, see, backing up in Kansas, I was that sissy kid who got bullied for playing with dolls.
Right.
And she said, think about what you've just done. Because at the introduction of the first book, and I touch a little bit on it in this book too, but she said, think about what you just did. And I got a little lightheaded, and I went out for a walk, and I was walking around Union Square, and I looked around and I thought, that little kid triumphed. If I could go back and say to that little kid, kid, you stick with this, because one day all these jerks who are bullying you are going to be like doing meth and working at gas stations, and you're going to be living in New York where they give you bushel baskets full of money to do this. Yeah, she said, just think about that. So, yeah, it tickles me. I marvel at my good fortune that people are saying, oh, here's this potload of money. Do this book for us, please. So that's we can
No, that's
that later, but that's the arc of this.
yeah. Well, that's awesome, and I mean, start with the last thing you said. It's it's so cool that you're able to realize that,
Yeah.
and it's a weird thing. Society does with people who have interests that are different than
Mhm.
whatever. And it's a shame, I think, it's not gotten any better. I mean, there are things that are tolerated better than they
Yeah.
were back
Hmm.
in the 60s for sure. Back in the 90s, back 10 years ago, there are things that are tolerated a lot better.
Hmm.
Um, but when someone is, and I'm not using weird as a pejorative here,
No.
but like something outside of the norm. I think I've seen it with my kids to an extent where school just tries to. I mean, I think I had it worse than them, I guess. So maybe it is getting a little better, but tries to force you into that box. No,
Yeah.
you should be doing this.
Hmm.
You shouldn't, don't worry. And I've said to you before we were recording, sometimes I think that when I talk to people who, I just recorded a podcast last week with a guy who teaches astrology.
Hmm.
And, the way he explained it, I'm like, it's a lot more than the crack astrology
Oh yeah.
that's his term that most
Hmm.
people understand. He's talking about the moon and the stars and the sun and all these things, and he's like, it doesn't preclude any, but it's not easily scientifically provable. So
Hmm.
they say, fuck that. Don't talk about that.
Yeah.
That's not, we talk about this. This is what we talk about. And I think that kind of fits in the same thing to an extent
Hmm.
with you're a boy. You're not, especially growing up where you did. I
Oh
mean,
yeah. Kansas. Yikes. Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah. I was like the middle of the country. A boy playing with dolls is gonna get a lot more crap than. I mean, maybe back in the '60s it didn't matter where you lived, but even
Well, but
today,
Kansas and Oklahoma, because my dad died when I was 10, and we were living in Kansas. My mother remarried. That's how we ended up in Oklahoma, which was
mhm,
not a step up.
no.
And yeah, and one of the things I realized during the pandemic, so I remember years ago, I was in therapy, and I had this therapist who he said, okay, given what you've been telling me, there were three outcomes: drugs, alcohol, suicide attempts. And I don't hear any evidence of this. And he couldn't figure out how that happened. And one of the things my mother had a lawyer in Oklahoma. His name was Harry. Now, Harry looked like the actor George Burns, comedian. In my mind, they're the same person. Harry, I remember one day my mom was in for something and I was sitting out waiting for her, and she came out of his office and he stood at the door and he kind of motioned for me to come in, and I thought, "Oh God, what did I do? It must have been really bad if Harry has to talk to me." So, she was standing there looking at him, and he said, "Get lost. I have some things I want to talk to him about." And I thought, "Oh, Jesus, what is this? What's this all about?" And he closed the door and he sat down across the desk. He kind of leaned back at me and he said, "I've been watching you, and I see a certain something in your eyes. And you could either get in a lot of trouble with it or you could have a lot of fun with it. And so we're going to have some conversations about how things work." And he said, "I know it sucks for you right now, but this is not forever. What you need to do right now is you need to get these grades, don't get in any trouble. One of these days, you can leave this." And there were other things that he said. Like one time, my mother, she made some bad choices. And one of them was this used car salesman that swindled her for our college money. And I remember him calling me in and he said, "Lonely people do very foolish things. And your mother is a very lonely woman and your college money is gone." And and for me the takeaway was lonely people do foolish things. And there there was he did this whole thing about selfish. He said if someone says you're being selfish, what they're saying is that you're not doing what they want you to do. It might not be something you ought to be doing, but they're telling you not what you should be doing, but what they want you to do. And so selfish is not a bad thing. It's gotten a lot of bad press. So I had that, that foundation of these kind of words of wisdom. But then the other thing I realized during the pandemic was that, I mean, we were locked in here, and I teach at FIT. So 2020 and 2021, I was making videos for school and I was playing with dolls. And I realized with this whole Crazy Bella story, I had several people text me and call me and ask me, "Are you okay?" I said, "No, I'm not. This is how I'm coping." And I realized that when I was a kid, that is how I coped with the bullying, is that I went into my room and I made things, and Estelle had stories, and that is how I escaped.
Hmm.
So, you know, that it was a piece of the puzzle that, it took me all these years to realize. And that is really, I mean, that whole story, and the thing about it that I kind of marvel at is just the silver lining to that particular chapter for me was these two books. And so listeners, please go buy them so that I can do more because I really would like to see Crazy Bella. Because someone asked me, what's the next book? In this book, Crazy Bella, you see her spy car because Crazy Bella, unbeknownst to everyone else, is she's undercover for the MI5 in the UK. And her spy car, which is in the book, you can see it, it has rocket launchers. She drives a car with rocket launchers. So I'm thinking maybe in the future that the spy car is going to be like the DeLorean in the Back to the Future movies. I just
Yeah.
and I did this thing on Wednesday night. It was one of these at my age, it's not these things kind of come. I got this guy contacted me from a software company in California, and the software deals with accessibility issues for blind people, deaf people, differently abled people. And they were doing their convention over in Brooklyn. And the opening night kind of thing, he wanted me to host a table. He said, think about it as there are tables of 10, and they had a guy who was in marketing. They had a gal who was like the digital archivist for the Morgan Library. They had a sculptor. They had six people, and he called us the notables. And I was the fashion guy. And he said, so, you're going to be just talking about fashion as it relates to accessibility, and we'll pay you. And I'm like, okay. So I thought $300, free dinner, Brooklyn. Okay, I'll do it. And then he sent me the letter of intent. And I couldn't believe my eyes. I sent it to my friend Jackie. I said, does this say what I think it says? And it's like $4,000 for this
Wow.
4 hours. And of course, then I started thinking, okay, this is too good to be true. And he said, we'll send you a 50% deposit to hold the date. And the check arrived. Okay then. So yeah, so Wednesday that's where I was. And one of the things talking to these people, one of the characters, you see him in Doll Couture, red carpet edition, is Gus. Now Gus, people think he's carrying a baby. It's a baby doll. Gus
Hmm.
carries a baby doll. For the longest time I did not know his name. He was the bodyguard's assistant. But then one day I understood that his name was Gus. And when I was coming home from that event, I thought, okay, Gus is on the spectrum. So, the story, and people ask me where the stories come from. I don't really know. I really don't. Just, the first book I had the head start of, all of that during the COVID. But this one, I, I, it was a red carpet, so I understood it was kind of episodic. So I put some of the characters from the first book there and then introduced some new ones. And it wasn't really until about, oh, I'd say maybe a week before I turned in the manuscript that I knew what the story was going to be.
Wow.
So
Yeah, well,
yeah.
that's I mean, that's how any original idea comes to be. It just
Hmm.
seeds planted who knows how, and
Yeah.
it goes and
And
you
the
know.
thing about this is it's not one or the other, it's both. It's a storybook, it's a sewing book. And so
Hmm.
for the people who sew, because in the sewing world, a lot of people know who I am. I'm pretty good at what I do. I mean, there are things I don't know. If I don't know something, I will say I don't know something, but I'm pretty good. And so the instruction has to hit a certain standard. But then, it's a story. So I had a friend of mine called me today. Now she was my PR person for a number of years in the Bay Area. And when I met her I met her through a mutual friend. She came to the studio. She needed to borrow something for a red carpet event. And, I don't normally do that, but this friend of mine said, "Could you please?" And she came, she talked about George. So I didn't ask her who this George was. Um, I called my friend and said, "Who is this George character that she talks about?" And she said, "Lucas. She's his PR person." And so for a time in the 90s, she was my PR person as well. And so, over the years, we've kept in touch. And so today she called me because I sent her the books. And she's like, "You are so good." She said, "I was reading the book." Her husband's Roy Rogers, the guitarist. She said, "I was reading the book to Roy, and we were both just sitting there going, he is so good." And I said, "Well, thank you. I take that as a compliment." So, you can enjoy it whether you know how to sew or not.
Yeah, and it's the concept of the book is so unique, and part of me is like, I I don't know what other fields, I don't know if that's the right word, but we'll go with it.
Mhm.
It could be used in, but I feel like that should be something other people are trying to do, a similar format of you can make a cookbook with a story
Mhm.
and the recipes are just kind of, you know,
Yeah.
in there.
Mhm.
I don't know if it would work as well with the cookbook, but I'm sure someone smart who knows how to cook and tell a story could figure it out.
Mhm. Well, with this book there was one precedent because this there was a book called the Mary Frances Sewing Book, and it was from the 1930s, and it was illustrations. The story was this young girl went to live with her grandmother for the summer because her parents had to go overseas. So the grandma let the girl go into her sewing room. And when the grandma was away and she was in the sewing room, all the sewing tools came to life and taught her how to sew.
Mm.
So that, there's precedent for it. But, for me, this that was a little bit, I mean, that was very much a little girl's book. This, it is a New York story. It's very diverse with the cast of characters. Um, you know, um, There's the GI the bodyguard is a GI Joe with a blonde wig. We don't know his whole story, but that we don't care. There's Crazy Bella, there is Medusa the opera singer, there is my assistant, of course, here, and the fitter. She's the one who makes the clothes fit. So, it's a kind of an interesting little cast, and they're different colors and ethnicities and so forth, which is what we have in New York. And so, this going to this thing last Wednesday with the accessibility, like, okay, you know, it 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 doesn't necessarily have to be front and center, but we have Gus now, and I know that he's on the spectrum, and we can talk about that. And and they said that, you know, um, accessibility could be you have a broken leg, which I never thought about. So, it's a way of sneaking in different messages and it being amusing. And then there's good information if you want to actually make all these clothes.
Yeah, I love the whole concept, and
Mhm.
I think it would be so interesting to see more people, again, experts in niche fields. I mean, I don't know if calling sewing niche
It's
is
kind of a niche field in its way.
in its way. Yeah, it's interesting. It's something that I think guys who, maybe I'm speaking for myself, guys who
Okay.
grew up with more traditional interests. Like I
Mhm.
was obsessed with football. That was
Yeah.
my whole life was
Mhm.
football. Um, Never learned to sew, and sometimes in adult life, it's like I should probably learn how to do some basic stuff. So,
Mhm.
like you get a tear in something, and it's just for me, it's throw it in the trash. Just
Oh, that's painful. Oh.
it is for me too, just because
Yeah.
I'm cheap.
Well, but see, this morning I have a coat that I've had forever. It's this old Saint Laurent coat that I bought years and years ago, and I go to the gym every day, and so I wear my gym bag kind of like this, and I wore a hole like through the wool and through right to the canvas. And I thought, oh no. And I had worn another hole in it. And so the challenge for me was, okay, you got to make a patch. And so the thing is, okay, how do you make a patch that looks like a design choice? And my solution I thought was very, very elegant. So it's, I don't give up clothes easily. And also I can make anything I want. See, that's the best part. This outfit I wore to this event, they said exactly what my students at FIT said. You made that? It's like, do you know what I do? See the sign? Yes, I made this. I figured I should you know, bring my
Yeah.
A game to this. So
You,
yeah.
you didn't show up in a black polo and khakis.
No, no, I don't have a black polo and khakis, so no, no. It's common.
Yeah, that's kind of like one of my go-to date outfits is khaki shorts because I live in Florida and a
Okay,
black
yeah.
polo shirt.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not stylish.
Well, not everybody has to be, dressed in designer couture all the time. For me, I have my look, and I'm a good tailor. I do a lot of tailoring, and actually, I have a project right now out in the workroom that this guy. And you never know who you're talking to in New York. This is what I do love about New York. Bob from the gym. This old guy, we chat. And one day he says, "So what do you do?" I said, "Well, it's really hard to explain. Just, here's my website. Go have a look." And next time I saw him, he was talking with someone and he called me over and he said to this person, "Do you know who he is? Elton John has a lot of his work, and I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. And he said, "I want you to make me a jacket." I said, "Well, it's going to cost you." And so he said, "Well, how much?" I named a number and he didn't flinch. I thought, damn, I could have wrung a little more out. But um,
That
so
happens too often to you. You shoot for the
well,
stars and they're
actually,
like, "Yeah, okay."
yeah, well, I'm the high price spread, as someone said once. So emailed, made an appointment for him to come, and I thought I really should just, Google him to see if there's anything I need to know about this person. I Googled him. Bob Kerrey, former senator of Nebraska, president emeritus of Parsons in New York. And like, who knew? So yeah, and the challenge with him is he's completely asymmetrical. And so, you have to fit that body. And that was my training is because Simone used to say, you can't have any judgment about who comes in your door. You have to make them look good.
Yeah.
So it's been a fun project because I've had to be really slow and deliberate with it because I can sew very quickly if I need to. But with this, it's a really slow process and lots of measuring and lots of checking because there's a left front, right front, left back, right back. I mean, I have to label everything like to death to make sure that I don't get anything flipped around. Um, that's what I do. I also have a dress for a client, similar thing. She's a little bit asymmetrical, and it's going to be a very pretty dress. But this is one of those where I just have to be slow and deliberate because then it will fit and it will look good, and everyone will be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've found I'm going to show you my favorite outfit of mine. I'm going to share my screen and show it
Oh,
and
okay,
and don't disconnect when you see it.
okay.
Um but I have found so I lost a little over 50 pounds
Oh
since last
wow.
June.
Hmm.
And as I've been, and I took 3 months, and I'm like, I just want to maintain it. I want to,
Hmm.
stop starving myself, eat normal amounts, see if I don't gain weight, which I didn't do.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna try to lose 20 more pounds.
Wow.
And so my wardrobe is in flux right now because I'm like, the clothes I was wearing are all way too big,
Yeah. Mhm.
and looks ridiculous. And the funny thing is, some of the things they're super big on you make you look fat because
Yeah.
fatter than you are, and some of them make you look like you're tiny because they're so big on you.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that works. And then the same thing with tight clothes. Like I still have my clothes from when I was 220 pounds, and I can squeeze myself into those,
Yeah.
but some of them I look like I'm, and some of them I look thin because it just the way the things flow and whatever. And I'm like, it's such a weird thing. But I'm gonna share this. This photo was taken when I was still heavy. Let me see. Hopefully, I share the right screen. Are you, yeah, I think you're seeing it.
Yes. Uh-huh.
That's not a onesie. Those are shirt and
Oh,
shorts.
I thought when I saw it on the internet, I thought that was a onesie.
Oh, you
Yeah.
did see that. You did.
Yeah.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. It is a button-down shirt and shorts.
Okay.
My friends, and I have like five of these outfits with
Okay.
matching tops and bottoms. My
Mhm.
friends hate when I wear them because it draws a lot of attention,
Mhm.
and
Well,
apparently they don't
I
like it.
remembered pajamas I had as a kid that looked like that. You know,
That particular one
pajamas.
does look like
Yeah.
pajamas.
Mhm.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
But
Uh,
if that's what you're going for, then I mean, you seeing me with this brightly colored sweater on that is much older than you. This is one of I bought this in 1983.
wow.
Yes, and my 1983, and it is just I keep it in good shape. And there are times that no other sweater will do, and I have to get that one out and wear it. So yeah, if it makes you happy, it makes you feel good, wear it.
Yeah. Well, your sweater, at least on Zoom, it looks like it. You could tell me you bought it today, and I'd believe you. Like it
Well, it's
looks.
like I said, it is in good condition because I do take care of my clothes.
Yeah.
My students at FIT, they there was one time I wore a pair of shoes in I bought in 1979, and this student pointed to them and said, "Ducky Brown." I said, "Close. Ducky Brown is designing shoes for Florsham, but the ones they were showing that season were this model, but these are the originals from 1979." And she said, "Well, they look like brand new." I said, "Yes, because I use shoe trees in all my shoes." There's certain things I've learned over the years that, if you want clothes to last, you buy good clothes, and then I have the shoe repair for the everyday shoes, and then I have the shoe repair guy for the really good shoes. So, I believe in taking care of them. And so, yeah, they pay 1983. I paid $5 for this in 1983, and it was on sale. I wanted it very badly, but when it was retail price, I thought, I can't justify that because, it's such a statement piece. And at the end of the season, because I do this thing, if it's meant for me, it will go down to a price I'm willing to pay and they will have my size. And there it was on the $5 rack, and
Mm,
I grabbed it and I have it to this day.
nice. It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
With more than just clothes, really.
Yes. So
Um.
what else you want to know?
Well, I do want to. I don't want to ignore your podcast,
Okay.
which you were talking about a little bit.
Hmm.
Um. I feel like there's more to get into, but let's go to the podcast because the way you were telling me about it, it sounds pretty unique in the style of it.
Okay.
So I guess you already told me,
Okay.
but for the
Yeah. Okay.
audience,
So for the
give me
audience, yes.
what you told me
Okay.
ahead of time.
Well, the book, you can get the book on Amazon. It's called All Grown Up Now, A Friendship in Three Acts. And the first sentence in the book is, I had never kidnapped someone before. So it kind of starts with the kidnapping. I had a friend, and podcast, there's also an audiobook on Audible. This friend of mine, when I was in Oklahoma, I was working for a store called Dillard's. And this guy was my boss. His name was Mark. Mark, eventually, he was with this guy named Victor, and he eventually moved away, and I got his job, and then he ended up in San Francisco, and then went to visit him. He said, "Bring your portfolio. I might have a job for you," and that is how I got out of Oklahoma. It was the happiest day of my life up till that point. So, it was the reason I call it friendship in three acts is our friendship had three periods, and there was an event that marked the change from one period to the next period. So, gosh, so it's Act Three is the final act where, because at the end of Act Two, he had called me and said that Victor was beating him. And I went into this because I watched my mother go through it with her second husband, and I did this whole deep dive about this is where this goes. This is not good. And then a couple of weeks later, he called me and woke me out of a sound sleep. And if you want to hear what I have to say, wake me up in the middle of the night because I like my sleep. And so I heard him on the phone. And when I first heard his voice, I thought, okay, he's either at the bus station or the airport. And then the more he talked, I realized, no, he's not at the bus station or the airport. I said, where are you? He said, I'm at home. I said, why are you at home? And he said, because I still love him. And that sent me ballistic. And I said, okay, I'm going to say what I've been wanting to say all these years. You're going to hear it. I never understood why the two of you were together, but now the situation has lurched from the neurotic to the pathological. And so I'm going to tell you, I will do anything I can to get you out, but you may not call me until you're ready to leave. Calling me to complain, I can't do that anymore. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help you. And so that was the end of Act Two. Well, the first part of Act Three starts 5 years later, around the time of the OJ thing.
Oh,
Yeah. And I got the call, and I understood that um, I had to go to Los Angeles, and the ex, or now ex, was a gun nut. And
oh,
so, the
nothing
whole thing,
dangerous about that.
oh yeah. And so, in the like the forward, I talk about, I made preparations, and one of them was I made sure my roots were done because I bleached my hair. And then made sure I had some good underwear on because my mother used to talk about, if you have a ratty underwear, the ambulance is not going to pick you up. And then I rented everyone's mom says that. And
Sound
then
advice.
yeah, and then I rented a spiffy black Chrysler LeBaron convertible because I thought, if I get my brains blown out, I won't have to pay for this. And that, I mean, that was a possibility. So I went and grabbed him and brought him back to San Francisco. And that period turned my life into kind of a crazy Fellini film for about 3 years. That actually is what the screenplay is based on, in case you're interested.
I am,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So, I wrote the book, and it was a talking cure because I just to jump, spoiler alert, he dies in the end, drops dead of a heart attack.
Mm.
And so I needed a talking cure, and that's where that book came from. And I would pitch it to agents, and they're like, "Oh, more of this, less of this," and what I'd say to them is, "Okay, if I make these changes, then will you take me on?" Well, no. It's like, well, then fuck you. I mean, I'm willing to listen if someone is saying, okay, here is the big fat check, or here is the, whatever. But, if they're just saying that just to show me that they know something, well, that's not
Hmm.
helpful. So I produced it myself. And then I'd have people say, well, I don't really read anymore. And I thought, okay, fuck it. I'm going to read it for you. So that's where the podcast started, because I had a friend who said to me, why don't you just do it as a podcast? So I had done voiceover back in the day with Sewing Today, so I can
Oh.
do voiceover. And one of the things because I do tell stories, one of the things that I really love about the podcast is sound effects. There's like
Mm.
one time I early on when I was young and beautiful in Oklahoma City, I had a friend named Penny. Now, Penny, look, have you ever seen the movie Gentlemen Prefer Blondes? Marilyn Monroe, Jane Russell.
I fell asleep watching it, not because of the movie, it was
Okay,
because of the drinking. But we were
okay,
watching that when we were filming Thanksgiving again. Me and my producer
okay,
Rick were started
okay.
watching that.
Jane Russell in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. My friend Penny looked exactly like her and had that figure, but she was 6'3" in stocking feet. And I had this little tiny apartment. I could touch the ceiling without, and I'm short. I didn't have to get on my tiptoes. I could touch the ceiling. And so she was always cracking her head on my kitchen door frame, because she'd have these high heels on, like, watch your head, thunk, and so with the sound effect, the thing was, and this sounds crazy, and you probably wouldn't understand this. I needed something that sounded painful but also funny. And the thing was a bolt of fabric hitting the floor. And it was like if you time it just right, watch your head thunk. Yeah, yeah, and and it gets a laugh whenever people hear it because it you're like, oh, but that's funny. So that is the podcast. Episodes 1 through 29 are the novel. And like I said, that I took all those episodes and strung them together, and that's the book on Audible. Then episodes 30 and above are what I call Tales of a Checkered Past. And so I could go anywhere. The first 29, you should listen to them in order, but 30 and above, you can kind of pick and choose. So there are things like My One and Only Walk of Shame, um, the Valentine's Day Jinx. And actually, what the Valentine's Day Jinx is, I'm going to tell one on myself. I lost my virginity on Valentine's Day, and he gave me a 2-pound box of Godiva chocolates in 1980. Now, in 1980, Godiva chocolates were $35 a pound.
Wow.
1980, that was significant. So, and I didn't give it up just because of that, but it helped. So, but you know what? For years, nothing on Valentine's Day. I'd be dating someone. I'm like, okay, maybe we're gonna have something. No. One year I witnessed a shooting. I spent most of the Valentine's Day night. I mean, it was just this
At least you
weird.
have a story.
Yeah, it was just this weird, like, but then it was like I'd moved to New York. So, this had been like decades when there was just dry spell on Valentine's Day. And the dam broke. And, it was like I ran into 3 different paramours. Um, and, yay. So the dam, so
Yeah.
30 and above, Tales of a Checkered Past. So that's the podcast.
Yeah, I'm 0 for my last 12 on Valentine's Day. Uh,
Yeah. But it
it's
was, it was just so weird because every year I think, well, now, okay, I'm dating someone. Okay, looks like it's going to happen. And then it wouldn't. And the witnessing the shooting, it was weird because I was in San Francisco and Market and Noe and the Cafe Flora restaurant. And when I saw it, I was with a friend and we were headed across Market and he grabbed me back by the shirt collar and said, wait, there's a guy over there with a gun. And so I thought, I'm looking for the cameras. I'm thinking it's some student, film project or something like that. And this guy with the gun is coming here. There's a guy coming this way, and they meet, and then the guy with the gun, bang, and the other guy falls to the pavement, and then the guy with the gun just kind of saunters away, and the crowd
Jesus.
just, I mean, everyone disappeared. And my friend's like, we got to get out of here. I said, no, we just witnessed a shooting. If you were that guy who got shot, you would want someone to, be
Yeah.
there. And so yeah, so we went over and he got him up and got him in the restaurant, and the police were there. We had to identify the guy. So we spent the evening in the police station, and they had in the Mission Police Station in San Francisco, they had this railing where they had all the working girls handcuffed. And I'm just I was, and they were like, honey, you want a date? It's like, so you're stupid. Me, 2 gay guys here, like, and you're like, honey, you want a date? Like, not
What
with you.
in the police station?
Yeah, like maybe if you were a guy, we might consider it, but no, you're not. So,
If
yeah,
there's a single day, I mean, I believe in legalization of prostitution regardless, but if there's a single day, you should just let it go. It's Valentine's Day.
yeah, it's true. Yeah. But they weren't letting them go because, yeah, but I just thought it was so amusing that first off, here they are handcuffed to the rail, just kind of standing in a row. And then they're like, honey, what? Hi, you cutie. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm cute, but no, no.
Yeah, they didn't learn very well. Uh no, that's and how many episodes do you have
Well, I think there are
total?
100, total of
Oh
100.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I cover a lot of different things. There's things like there's one called All the Retail Ladies because there is a certain kind of gal in retail that I regard as the aristocracy of retail. And I talk about some of the ones that I came across in my time when I was in retail. There's one that I call, oh God, I can't remember the name of it. It's in one of it's closer to the end, but I had one time when I was working in Dillard's, I had this one guy say to me one time, this old guy, he said, "You walk like someone who knows where he's going." It's called the walk. Yeah. And I didn't, I knew it was a compliment. I said thank you, but I didn't quite know what that meant. And so years later, my husband he was working in this very fancy paint showroom, like $150 a can for paint. And so there was this young man there. And this young man I was sitting in the back waiting for my husband for lunch. And this kid was like, he was on the phone and he was on the computer and helping a customer and he was mixing some paint, and I mean, there was this whole thing. And I remember what the guy said about you walk like someone who knows where they're going. And I saw that in him. And it's like, now I understand what that means. Because, when it's you, you don't, I just didn't know what it meant. But yeah, so I weigh in on things big and small.
Yeah. No, I'll have to. And what's the name of it?
All grown up now.
Oh, All Grown Up Now. Okay.
Yeah. Because that's kind of the last in towards the end of the book. I talk about doing the right thing is never easy, it's never cheap, it's never popular. And sometimes you don't get what you thought you were going to get. And the only reward is that you did the right thing. And I
Hmm.
guess I'm all grown up now.
Yeah. Well, and things worked out pretty well,
Not
despite.
really. Not really. Not for my friend Mark.
Oh
He
no,
brought
no, for you. I mean,
for me, yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean that, but I mean there that really it kind of it threw a wrench in my life for about 3 years, but it was one of those things that I had made a promise. And one of the things he kind of said to me one time that the thing that kept him going is he knew he could call me.
It's a valuable uh trait to be one of those people.
Yeah.
It's a yeah. I don't want to I don't want to deep dive down that rabbit hole, or we'll be talking for way
Well,
too long.
what friend of mine who did read the book, because the crazy ex, because abusers like to isolate, and I think the guy's I'm not going to say his name. I think he thought he had successfully gotten rid of me. And a friend of mine who read the book said, because this guy also, he thought it was cute. He said, so this friend of mine said, so he thought you were cute, but he didn't realize you were also deadly.
Mm.
Because he didn't expect that after all this time, I was going to come in and pull the ballsy move I did. And it was one of these, well, I had made a promise. And this guy got me out of Oklahoma. So I kind of owed him one. It was the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, and
That's
doing
what
the
I got. It
yeah,
was the right thing to do. Yeah.
doing the right thing can be incredibly painful in the
Mhm.
moment, and the moment can last a while. Like you said, it was years.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know. I like to think when all is said and done, if you did the right thing, you look back and you're proud of yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you'll listen to the podcast, and
yeah.
especially, I'm just going to put the teaser out there for anyone who's interested. There was what I call the Commando Raid in Los Angeles. And this was one of those things. There was no thought involved. Um, Mark had gotten a restraining order and they lived in West Hollywood. And I had written the restraining order request. I didn't put in it that he lived in West Hollywood, but one of the requests was that he'd get to go to his place and get his things with police protection. And the judge said yes. So the other guy's lawyer was kind of getting all upset about, well, I've never blah, blah, blah. I said, well, we will be calling you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to set up a time to go get these things. So the next morning we called and the guy got really kind of snotty and he said, well, I'm going to file an injunction in court tomorrow to have that part of the thing set aside. So you're just going to have to wait. And the tone he took, because I was listening on the extension, the tone he took just pissed me off. And I thought, you do not talk to my friends like that. And so Mark was standing there like, well, shit. I said, get your coat. We're going to the courthouse. He said he's going to court tomorrow. We're going to court today. And we ran down to the courthouse. We got hold of the clerk that was in the courthouse the day before. And the guy was, Mark was saying, this is what he's doing. And the clerk was saying, I can't give you any legal advice, but you have a valid court order. So finally, I just kind of did my like Lana Turner and kind of draped across his desk. And I said, so Doll, what you're saying is that if we show up with this thing today, it will work. And he looked at me and he just smiled really big and he kind of nodded a little bit and he said, you do have a valid court order. And I said, thank you. And I mean, this all happened in a blur. And I had 2 tickets to Los Angeles on the plane. I had arranged for a rental car and a U-Haul and the whole bit. And Mark's like, what are we doing? Like, we have to get to Los Angeles. And we descended on this guy's place with 3-day laborers, 4 deputy sheriffs with guns drawn, and a big U-Haul. And we swarmed over this place and we were out of there like 6:05 that evening. And this poor guy did not know what hit him. And the police found armor-piercing bullets. So they had to stay the whole time. And so here we're like driving up I-5 back to San Francisco. And the part I didn't think about because I wasn't thinking that far ahead was unloading that damn truck. But when I think back on that though, I was telling some friends like a couple days later that, what we had done. And they were like, damn, and there was a private eye. His name is John Nazarian. He's like high net worth individuals. This guy, he's kind of scary, but he's about twice, but my height, but like twice as wide, and gold tooth, Fu Manchu mustache. And few days later, I was over at Mark's house, and I looked out the window, and this guy was walking down the street. I'm like, oh my God, Mark, it's John Nazarian, and he said we have to let him in. We can't have him mad at us, and he, of course, talked to Victor as well. And he came in and I was so scared. I couldn't stand up. I wasn't worried about getting my brains blown out at the apartment, but this guy somehow just scared the life out of me. And I was sitting there. And so he looked at me and he said, so you're the guardian angel. I said, no, I'm the one who drove the getaway car. And he said that the other guy thought that it was like this elaborately planned thing we'd been planning for weeks. I'm like, no, you were just dealing with a pissed off queen with a court order, a credit card, and 24 hours. That is the only thought that went into this. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't, I mean, your screenplay is
the screenplay's Act 3, which is all of that. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah. One thing
if you're interested in reading it, I can send it to you.
Sure. Yeah. I won't give you studio notes. I mean, I'll give you notes, not probably of anything to change, of just compliments. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I'd love to read it. But yeah, comment you made about your book earlier, where you get notes. You should make these changes, and I was talking to one guy who was pitching, I think it was a TV show. I think it was a pilot to a network. And they came with all these notes. And he's like, so I'd change things and send it back. And half the time, the change that they asked me to make, they sent, I don't like this. You should change this. And he's like, oh, I don't know. I really like that. I don't know. What if we do? And then he said the original idea. And they're like, that's great.
Yeah.
It's like, you're the one who made me change it. I changed it because I thought so. Your instinct on your book were right. So I'm sure your instinct on the screenplay is going to be the same.
Okay.
Of a lot of people like to show how smart they are by making notes and telling you this needs to be this way.
To me, it felt like they wanted to lift their leg on it and mark it. And it's like,
exactly.
No,
there's
you can do that if you're paying for it, but not if you're not.
Yeah, well, there's going my corporate job before entertainment was insurance, and I was in litigation, like I was in high level stuff, so we had to have lawyers and people proofread letters we were sending. And a lot of times I'd go, and there was this one lady, and she insisted on doing everything handwritten. She'd cross it out, and she'd write. And she was a nice person. Like, she's a very nice person, but she'd cross out paragraphs and rewrite them by hand while you just sit there like, boy, this is an efficient use of time.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is half the time you'd go make those changes, go back, and the only thing she'd change are the things she wrote. And a lot of times they'd sound a lot more like what I wrote than
Yeah.
what she wrote. And it was just like, there's some of it's like people who perpetually second guess themselves.
Mhm.
I don't do that creatively, artistically as much as I do in like personal life, but
Yeah.
there's which is not a good thing. But there's the second guessers, and then there's the I just need to show you, like you said, just mark your territory, or I need to just show this person I'm smarter than they are, and I know better, so I'm gonna make them change. I got to find some because look, you're if you get the script or the book and you say this is perfect, why do
Mhm.
you even have a job?
Yeah.
So that's but yeah, I'd love to read it because I'm sure it's fascinating, and I won't give you a bunch of studio notes for sure.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
um see, we've already done an hour.
Wow.
Um so and that's about how long I like, even though I feel like I could talk to you for another hour.
Yeah.
Because your life is fascinating. The stuff you're doing is so unique and different than when I was just to tell you, like when I was talking to someone, actually a woman I'm dating, uh, she's like, he does what? And I'm like, it's hard to explain. Like, she's like, well, her thing's like, are you going to talk
Yeah.
about dolls for an hour? And I'm like, no, kind of, but not, not real. That's not the, uh,
Yeah. Mhm.
but it's fun to talk about topics that I'm not familiar with, and I learned about really just in preparation to talk to you, and then in
Mhm.
talking to you, I always learn more when I talk to people than when I read, because I don't know, that probably says something about the education system, but.
Oh well.
Kenneth, where obviously there's the book and everything's going to be linked in the show notes, but where
Yeah.
can my audience find you for more? I know there's a lot of stuff, but I'll link all of it.
Well, there's KennethDKing.com is my website. Instagram is Kenneth D. King. And Lola's Instagram, where a lot of the book stuff is being promoted from, is Lola the Showgirl 24. And so
I
yeah,
follow Lola.
yeah, Lola's great. And really like roll it all the way back to the very beginning because the blackmail story is hilarious. It really was a lot of fun and it did keep me from going crazy during the COVID. It did.
I love that. Yeah, I'm going to. I have it actually open on another screen, and I as you were telling the story, I'm like, I got to go down and look further because I followed Lola, but I didn't go all the way to the bottom of the
Yeah.
Instagram. I didn't
Yeah,
stalk
because
Lola.
at some point, what you're going to see there is when there's a photo of her in a restaurant with Marley Blackwood of the Marley Blackwood Literary Agency. And the photo of the guy with his back to the camera is my husband.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because I said, honey, I have a favor. I'll take you to lunch, but this is what I need you to do. And so, I had the blank space where Lola would sit, and I had the manuscript on the banquette, and I dropped her in later. But so there's the photo of them in the restaurant, and then there is the spoof of the Variety magazine or Variety newspaper where she's inked the book deal. Yeah, there are all sorts of little things like that in there that are fun to do.
Yeah, I'm trying to scroll. It's just slowly loading as I
Yeah,
as I
I
talk, and
know.
that's hey, if you could see, I was giggling at a couple of things I saw. Well, best of luck with the book.
Thank you.
Again, it's Doll Couture,
Red carpet
red
edition.
carpet edition. And again, the link's going to be below. And yeah, man, you've lived a inspiring and interesting life, I would say, to this point. And I'm sure there's more great stories to come in the future.
Yes. Well, good. Thank you.
And thanks again. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure.
That's it. That's all. Hope you had a ball. Thank you, Kenneth, for coming on. Just again, interesting conversation, and glad that I had him on. Check out his book. The links in the show notes. All his other links to socials, like his Instagram that we talked about. Definitely something interesting to check out. So all my links are in the show notes also. Make sure you rate, review wherever you're listening to this, Apple, Spotify, especially Apple. You can give it a review on IMDb also. And if you've seen Thanksgiving again, pop a rating for that too. And yeah, follow me on the socials and boom, it's over. Thanks for listening.
It was amazing. I loved it.
Be sure to come back for another great episode.
I'm one wing away from Jeff Macolino.
Of the Jeff Macolino Podcast.
How much time did you spend on thinking of the name of your podcast? You went just straight, that's my name, I'll add the word podcast to it.
Yup. See you next week.